Really good. I'm absolutely loving this new Ascension Experience Financial Prosperity 4-week segment. It's incredible.
I love today. I love the conversation today. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty interesting. Like the whole thing's around financial prosperity for this 4 weeks, which is obviously a major preoccupation for a lot of people. And there's that apparent contradiction that the more you want it, the more you are focused on the lack of it, and the more you would be exploring and experiencing the lack of it. And that there's balancing the whole thing, really, that to have what you might call the right attitude towards money. And it would appear that this single-minded pursuit of that is not necessarily the right answer. And it's necessary to balance all areas of abundance in your life, which includes, besides money, there's health, time, freedom, and relationships, I think, are the ones that they talk about in the work. And that if you are out of balance with one of those, then that kind of detracts from the entire experience. So that was quite a profound learning, that they're all worthy goals, but really you want to be making sure that you're in alignment in all of those areas.
It's what kind of struck me was, I took a note too, we had talked about, and I think this is just such an important factor regarding the true manifestation of what we're looking for is actually the feeling, not the physical manifestation of it first. It's the manifestation of the feeling you'd get. Like that to me was big. I was like, wow. And until you get the manifestation of the feeling, you can't get the physical aspect of it. I thought that was really profound.
Somebody explained that to me maybe 3 years ago. I remember on a course I was doing, there was a woman who was a coach on that, and she, unbeknown to me, obviously was well versed in this, and she explained that we do things for the feeling of it. And to be honest, I kind of vaguely understood it in theory, but I hadn't really, to be honest, I had no idea what she was saying. And I now get it, in that if you win the lottery, you got $1 million or $10 million or something, and we think we're going to feel amazing. But so what it is the feeling of feeling amazing. And then Joshua coaches us to say, well, what if you were to cultivate that feeling regardless of whether you have the money or not? And in this moment, you have enough of everything you need. You ask yourself, yeah, I do. And so therefore you don't really lack anything in this moment. And pretty much in any moment, that is also true. So therefore it's the idea of $1 million and what you might think it would bring. But if you can cultivate that feeling and have that feeling anyway, then suddenly the $1 million itself becomes less important. And ironically, when one becomes detached from that, one can allow the money to flow, and you're more likely to find that you have the river of money flowing to you anyway.
Yeah, there's a author, Neville Goddard. Have you read him?
I'm familiar with him. I haven't read much of him. Yeah. Did he do Conversations with God, or was he that guy?
No, that was that was Brian, or actually I have that guy too. I just looked at his. Who was that? No, Neville Goddard's got a bunch of books. There are a lot of short ones, which are great. And to be honest, he always talks about, everything is about the feeling. Everything he teaches is that unless you feel you're there, unless you feel you have it, you can't actually experience it in the physical. Unless you're feeling the opportunity, then you don't ever have it. Which I love, and it really does. But today, for some reason, it just hit home in a really big way. I when she said the manifestation is the actual feeling, not the physical.
Yeah,
I was sort of like, that phrase that way really kind of like hit home.
Yeah, and they also talked about, in the material, Joshua talks about that if you are feeling in lack and unworthy, and you do receive a bunch of money, it's kind of like fuel to the fire of your exploration of lack, and it won't actually work for you. And I probably would have disbelieved that, but I think I mentioned to you last time we spoke that after I sold out of my business a number of years ago and received a pile of cash for a bunch of reasons, I think I felt even more unworthy than I did before. And part of it was because I had my identity tied up in that business and in finance and status and money and everything. And suddenly that was all ripped away and I had nothing there to replace it. Well, I did. It was my former self before I got into the whole world of money. But it took me a long time to realize that that was a valid exploration and that was really the former self I wanted to connect with again. So that was pretty interesting as well. And there's also that whole thing around if your current financial or any other aspect of your life, your current financial situation is the manifestation of your current thinking and your vibration, your thoughts, your feelings, and all that, then changing that external circumstance won't change the way you feel, because it's the way you feel that created that in the first place. I was listening to a podcast from one of our fellow travelers on this journey, Jackie. She just started podcasting and she's done maybe 5 episodes. And she had an analogy that you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're feeling cold. And so she said, you want to put on a sweater, but you don't put the sweater on the image in the mirror because that's your creation. That's kind of an imaginary thing. That's kind of like trying to change the external circumstances to make you feel better. So you got to put the sweater on yourself, and then the one in the mirror has the sweater on is warm as well. So I thought that was a good analogy to try and explain that concept, whereby your external circumstance is your creation, and by changing that, you can't change how you feel because it works the other way. It's how you feel that created it. Which, once you kind of get it, it's a great concept.
Yeah, that is. I mean, and for me, it goes really, really deep, because there are so many different feelings, right? When it comes to, you think you want money for whatever reason, right? We want it for X, Y, or Z, right? And when you put the feeling first, it really changes almost why you want it. Like, why would you feel good? What would you do with it, right? Why would it make you feel like how?
Yeah.
You have to put it into actionable or tangible circumstances versus, I want to win lotto. Well, what does that mean, right? You want to win lotto. How does that help anybody? Or how does that help you? It was even interesting that the woman today on the call said that she would be afraid of winning lotto. Because
I wouldn't be that scared, to be honest. I wouldn't be that scared. I'm brave when it comes to winning lotto. But a friend of mine who's an LOA author, Priya Kajuria, also writes under the name Priya Davis. She just wrote this novel, by the way, called Bollywood PI, which is hilarious. Anyway, she does these LOA playbooks, and one of them I got way back was this thing where you name a sum of money, like whether it's $1 or $10, $100. Let's say you got $100 today. And what are you going to do with $100? And that's fine. And then tomorrow it's double, then it's 200, then it's 400, then it's 800. And before you know it, you're getting into the millions. And, once you're sort of like, I want a better house, maybe a different car, and, maybe I want to buy a house for my kids or whatever it might be, and you spend a few $1,000,000, and then it's like, okay, I've got 100 million. What do I do with the other 95? And it's like, do I actually need it? Like, why did I think I wanted $100 million? And that's a very sobering game to play. It's a lot of fun, but the bigger the number gets, then you just make shit up, because it's like, what am I going to do with that money?
Yeah, it's Abraham Hicks has, it's a training, like one of their manifestation practices is, and they tell you to, and I actually went out and bought an accounting book, and you have to write a check, and it starts with write a check for $1. You double it every day, and you're right, you get to the point where it's millions, but you have to spend it on yourself. So you start with $1. Okay, well that's easy. I'm going to buy whatever, 2 stamps, right? But by the time I tell you, the second week, because there's a period of time where the money is, it's between 1,000 and 10,000. Right. There's only, you can only buy so many suits, right? Or so much clothes, right? And then it gets to between 10,000 and 100,000. Like, what are you going to, like, yeah, there's money you can do. After you get up to 100,000, you buy a few homes, to your point. Like, what are you doing with it? So
Yeah.
it's the low end of the start, like $1,000, $1,500, you great dinner, right? Or something like that. If it's $5,000, fine, a custom suit, 10 grand, two custom, whatever it may be, a custom outfit. Then it's 20, you're like, okay, like how many, like, fine, you want to pay for your kid's college, right? Or your kid's school. All of a sudden it goes to a point where, and then you hit another point where you can do something big with it. And then you got a lull all the way up to, let's say, 1 million. And then you have another lull up. And then after 5 million, to your point, like, what are you doing with it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's once
Yeah.
you do that exercise, you're like, and then you start thinking about yourself, like, wait a minute, I can't figure out how to spend $1 million on myself. Well, you can,
It's actually pretty
obviously, a
hard to
million.
do, you know.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. There was a time when we had, Trace and I had, like, between us 3 houses, 2 pieces of vacant land, and maybe 5 cars spread around the houses and all that kind of stuff. And I got rid of all of that, but I don't think I would do it again because it diminishes your freedom and your choices, and you end up spending a lot of time managing all of those things and checking the insurance and the maintenance. And if you have a vacation home, instead of thinking, right, I can fly again, I'm going to go to India or France again, you're thinking, oh, I really should go to my vacation home because it's there. And so obviously it's a wonderful thing and I did enjoy it, but I wouldn't do it again because I like the simplicity and freedom of an unencumbered lifestyle.
It's funny you say that. So whenever I talk about financial abundance, I always start with freedom. I just want more freedom. I want freedom. I don't want to have to be tied down to report into a job, right? I don't,
Yeah.
I like working and doing stuff. There's no question. I enjoy it. I'm doing a business plan now, a financial business plan we're working on the last 3 days, which I enjoy. Like, that's fun stuff, figuring all this stuff out and where it's going to be. I don't like deadlines. So it's funny that, when you just said what you just said, because if I'm leading with freedom and I equate financial abundance to multiple houses, multiple cars, they're competing, right? Because to your
Yeah.
point, you had it and you had less
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is a preoccupation. And also, I guess another thing, which is not an essential part of it, is that I probably defined myself by my assets and my travel style and all that kind of thing. And I don't do that anymore. And many people who know me now don't know that former self. So, and I don't portray that I have money and a business and all that kind of crap. I don't do any of that anymore. And I like the point that Joshua makes, is that you can present that, because what happened was when I was quite young, I started making a lot of money and everybody looked up to me, and that was very seductive. It was awesome. And I knew that I was kind of walking away from my other creative, intuitive self and going into this money world, which, was not who I had been before. And Joshua was right that you might enjoy the buzz of people supposedly looking up to you, but deep down you know that they are liking a version of you who is not really you. It's not the authentic you. So it's never that validating, because, well, if only they knew what I was really like. And there's all the imposter syndrome and all the rest of it. Whereas recently I've noticed that after having done 12 boot camps and this other work and being an explorer, an adventurer in this realm for a number of years now, that I suddenly realized that I have some information that other people don't have, and that people really appreciate and value that information, people who I respect. And I suddenly realized, this is a far more valid kind of respect, because what's the word I want? I'll say respect while I think of a different word, that I'm getting from people validation. Not that I'm seeking external validation, but it's a much warmer feeling, because it's like, oh, okay, I was my genuine, authentic self, just speaking from the heart, and people really appreciated it and got some benefit from it. It felt really good. And that is a really different thing from making a lot of money and all the team looking up to you and all that kind of thing. And it's a far more interesting exploration. I'm just going to change my virtual background here to nothing, because I think it keeps kind of buzzing out on my head. Don't want to be distracting to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, it's interesting, but so for me, money, I had a lot of it before I got married, had kids. So I didn't get married till I was 33, 34. So it offered tremendous opportunity to take a group of friends who I'd gone to college with, played sports with, and we all moved in the city. We all lived together. Anybody who had it, we just shared it, and we went everywhere. And and that's, for me, that was the freedom. I mean, we went anywhere, did everything, and there was never a place we couldn't go to or couldn't travel to or couldn't go out to dinner to or check. And I kind of feel like, for me, that when I started having family and all that, and then all that extra income went to them, the feeling changed of having it. Like it was never enough for me to take care of what I needed, because it was all going to the kids and to the of my new living expenses. So money went from, I always said, I'm so much more fun when I have money, because literally we get on a plane, we go like, let's just go have fun. Like what can we think of, and let's go have fun. And then it was like private schools for the kids, right? Because New York City, there's no kindergarten in public kindergarten or preschool in New York City. You got to go, it's all private, right? That's the only thing. So then, and the costs are ridiculous, right? So all of a sudden, all that extra money was going, I paid more for my kids' preschool than I'm paying for my daughter's college.
Wow. Wow.
That's how crazy it was in New York City.
Right.
And I had 2 kids, 3 years each. I will pay more in 1 year, I'll pay more than I'm paying for 2 years of my daughter's college.
Wow. That is crazy. Yeah.
Right. And so it evolved, it changed for me. And then our cost of living just kept going up and up and up. And my salary didn't keep going up and up. We made a one band and went up a little bit, but my relationship changed so much. And it's funny that it just through the Joshua teaching that I'm realizing that it went from being so much fun and enjoyable and sharing. Like I never cared. I'm like, okay, whatever. Someone takes something, someone do something, go ahead. I don't, as long as we're having fun. Then it got back to managing the nuts and bolts, being like, how did I not have enough? I'm like, we're taking all this in, and how does it not take care of this? And then it became a burden. Right. And that's, to me, it's interesting as I'm going through this process now and going through these questions, and poverty became a fear. Like I would see somebody, a homeless guy in the streets, and I would be like, oh, and I would have heart palpitations. I'm like, I don't want to get there, because every month the expenses went up, and my salary or the money I was making, my investments just weren't getting there fast enough.
It's interesting you mentioned about homeless people, because Joshua periodically talks about homeless people and how, on the one hand, that might terrify you, but on the other hand, can you see that they have enormous freedom? And by the time you get to that point, you probably really don't care what anybody thinks about you at all, and you don't have the encumbrance of any of those thoughts and ideas or the insurance and all that, sort of stuff. I guess it was also brought home to me about the whole managing of property, real estate, was because with one of our houses, which was in a city called Christchurch here in New Zealand, there was a big earthquake maybe about 8-9 years ago, and we got a lot of damage. There was 2 actually earthquakes, and there'd never been an earthquake there in living memory. And it looked like the fault line hadn't moved for 15,000 years, so nobody even knew it was there. It was buried under post Ice Age alluvium. Anyway, so it made a lot of damage to the house, and I had beautiful things in the house, and a lot of that got smashed. And so managing the insurance claim became a major preoccupation for probably 6 months. And we were pretty much one of the first to cross the line in terms of the contents, the possessions claim and also the rebuild, and got it out of the way. And there are still some people who haven't resolved their issues, but it kind of brought it home to me that it's all just stuff. And I had an even more poignant experience of that when my mother, who's now 91, about 2 years back, my sister and I and Trace went to the family home, and Mum had just moved into a village somewhat belatedly. She had memories and stuff going back many, many decades, lived in the same house 50 years. And she's now in this small apartment in this village, where she gets care. And we had to go through all her 50 years of stuff and work out what could she fit in her small apartment, what keepsakes that my keepsake manager youngest brother would manage for the family, and then what else would either be given away to charity or put in a trash, in the trash. And it was kind of tough in a way, but I realized, Mum really identified with all of that, and where's my this and where's my that and all this sort of stuff, as if that was her and her identity. But I realized that my experience with my mother didn't change. She's still the incredibly important person to me that she always was, but she's now been stripped of 95% of all that stuff. 50 years or more than 50 years, probably 70 years of stuff. And that was really sobering, because I got all this beautiful stuff still. And then when I go, to someone else, it's just a pile of Rob's, stuff. What are we going to do with this stuff? Like, it won't mean anything to anyone else. And then I thought, right, in the simplest sense, none of that stuff matters at all, even though I think, my beautiful Mont Blanc fountain pen or my incredible Macintosh hi-fi system are really, really amazing. And truly they are. I love those things. But to someone else, it's like, what the hell are we going to do with this stuff? Like, look at all the stuff he had. And it's nothing. It's not me. It doesn't define who I am. It doesn't actually change anything. And when it got damaged in the earthquake, it didn't matter. And when we lived overseas for 5 years, some of that stuff was in storage for 7 years, some in another part of the country for 5 years, and it was all amazing stuff. But to be honest, we were living in this relatively simple apartment in Mumbai in India, and we didn't have any of that stuff. And did it make any difference? No, it made no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, it's funny. So now I live in Arizona. But when we moved, I was living with 2 kids and a wife, 4 of us. It was a 1,200 square foot apartment in New York City on 74th in York, and it was, it was fantastic. Now we're in a house with, I can't keep track, and I'm always like, and honestly, I find every space we fill with stuff. Like, can we not? How do we? When we moved, we had 1 living room. We had a dining room. We had a little kitchen. We had 2 bedrooms. Both my daughters shared a bedroom. My wife, a couple of bathrooms, and that was it. And it was easy. And we didn't collect stuff. We didn't have, it wasn't a lot of stuff. Now, I got stuff. We have a garage that's just full with stuff. I said to them, where did this stuff come from?
Yeah.
Can we just get rid of it all?
Yeah. It is a thing. And when we first got this house in Christchurch, we didn't have much stuff in there. We had some really nice stuff, but there wasn't a lot. And I really liked the simplicity, the kind of Zen thing I used to think of it, of not being cluttered. And slowly it accumulated. But I noticed with my sister, who lived in Korea for a number of years in a small apartment, and now they're back in New Zealand and Wellington living in a small apartment, and they've kind of brought back that whole idea with them. It's like, we live in a small apartment. We don't need all this stuff. There's only a limited amount of room. So I say to her, why don't you get a such and such? She said, no, we don't need it, and there's no room, and I'm really happy without it. And, why would I want to go and spend time and money on that and then clutter up some of the space, the small amount of space we have? And it's like, it's kind of an imposed discipline, but she's really embraced it in a super positive and constructive way. And I think it's a fabulous way to live, the simplicity of it. They do have a wall of books and CDs, but that's their thing. It is an entire wall. But apart from that, they keep it simple, which is great.
I noticed that I pretty much live on my my phone, my computer, and my iPad. All my books are on my phone.
Yeah.
My iPad. And even though I have other stuff, and I have a desk, it's so funny. I try to keep my desk completely clean, and it's cluttered with stuff. And then I look, and I haven't touched the stuff that's in 2 weeks. That's sitting on my desk.
Yeah. So why don't we put it away or get rid of it? Yeah.
We have this fascination, and it really does go to your relationship with money and things. When why do you want those things? Why do you want? I want money to be able to travel with my kids for freedom, right? To be able to do different things, to show them experiences, to take friends on trips, to have people over, and do wide, fun vacations with groups of people, to take 30 people rafting at the Colorado River, right? I like to do big things and have fun, right? And stuff like that. but you really don't need a lot of money to do that.
No, that's true. I discovered that as well. Like in the past, I used to try and fly business class, occasionally first class, all of that kind of stuff, and it really mattered to me. But in the last 5 years, before COVID, that is, when we were traveling all the time, right? We were kind of living in India and then in France a bit, but we traveled extensively to the UK and the States and Australia, around France and Spain and Italy, blah, blah. Anyway, so we're traveling a lot. And in the end, it was like, we just book like, the budget airline, and I just get on with my simple backpack and my laptop inside, wearing jeans and sneakers and t-shirt. And we kind of got it down to the most stripped down rudimentary thing possible. But also, like, I used to be in lounge, airport lounge clubs and all that. And by the time you go through security, and because they don't open the gates until so many hours beforehand, like the time in those lounges and all the rest of it is shrinking and shrinking. And then sometimes they'd be full. And I thought, you know what? It's easier just to find a nice spot and sit down in an airport with your earbuds or a book on your phone or something, and forget all of that stuff and strip it down to the bare essentials. And to us, it became like getting the subway or getting a bus. And it was just like, this is super efficient and we're going to do it in the most minimal way possible. And that was really good, to let go of all the persona stuff around flying. And I remember once this woman said to me, she's married to a woman who's very wealthy, and although she herself wasn't until she got married. And she said, when I said we were about to fly to wherever it was overseas, and she said, "Oh, what class are you flying?" And this was right at the beginning of my transition from one persona to another. And I felt mortified that she asked me, and because we'd booked economy, and they always flew business. And in the past I had too. And I thought it mattered. Which was pretty hilarious. I gave her one of my Mont Blanc pens one day, and because she loves Mont Blanc pens, and one was given to me in acrimonious circumstances, so I never liked this particular pen. I had maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and she loved them. So I thought, this is my perfect opportunity to give it to her. We're in a quiz team every Tuesday night, and she's a wonderful person. I love her dearly. She's I don't mean to be rude, but she's short, she's reasonably fat, she's got a buzz cut, and she's lesbian as well, right? So which you'll see why I mentioned that, which you probably gathered because she has a wife. And so I gave her this Mont Blanc pen, which is worth thousands of dollars, and she was like, for like half a second she was speechless, which is quite a rare thing. She's Texan, by the way, and lived in New York, so speechless is not part of her. She looks at me, this short tubby lesbian woman, and says, "I suppose you want sex now."
That's fantastic.
And then I was speechless. It's like, and my thought
Oh
was,
my God.
much as I love you, actually, that never occurred to me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, she got me there. She used to work in that famous Oscar Wilde bookshop in New York.
Oh yeah, yeah. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, it's called Oscar Wilde Bookshop, I think. It's anyway. Yeah, she's an amazing woman. So, another thing I wanted to talk about was what we've been doing in the Ascension experience the last time, which was like, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 100 on those 10 points, and then take
I struggled with that.
Oh,
I struggled with that. Yeah, it's funny you just said that. Where was that? I was just, I had picked that up, and I really started to feel guilty that I would say, like, on the financial side, where do you feel? I'm like, I don't know, 30 or 40. Like I didn't feel like 100. I'm like, wow, but I do, but I'm lucky and I'm blessed. And I'm like, wow, do I really say 30 or 40? And and I feel like I want so much more, but I have so much. I really started to play with my head. I'm like, wow, I'm having a manifestation event right now.
It's a pretty deep exercise. And so just for people listening or watching, the aim is to measure yourself or score yourself on a scale on these 10 areas, which I'll say what they are: is money flow, relationship with a mate, relationship with family, relationship with friends, your health, level of freedom, your work, your passions and interests, stress level, and overall satisfaction with life. So you give yourself a score of 1 to 100, add it up, divide by 10. And so mine came up like 8 or something, 7.8. And then you say, right, which ones are below that average? And those are the ones, which included for me, money flow, relationships with family, my health, and passions and interests. Yeah, I could spend more time on my passions and interests. So that was really incredibly powerful for me. It's like, yeah, I got a lot of incredibly good family relationships, but there's two that are not good, and relationships, and one which is pretty average. So immediately I thought, okay, how would I get into sync with that? What do I do? So one of those people, I messaged them and just chatted and said, if you guys are got any time, come and visit, and chatted about football and stuff. And some of the others I'm not in contact with, I thought, right, what if I managed to get my negative view of those people to at least initially neutral? What if I can just get to neutral on them and realize that the things that pissed me off about what they did in the past were for me, not to me, and that I attracted it and all the rest of it. So I thought, I kind of knew that, but I hadn't really worked on those. So that's been very powerful. And I think I told you previously that when I changed my attitude to my mother and stopped getting hung up about feeling only loved conditionally and all that stuff, when I realized we're eternally connected and she's just playing the role I wanted her to play, then suddenly it was like instantly her whole attitude to me changed from what it had been for the previous 60 years of my life. And I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to change my attitude to these people, and I'm going to start off by being completely neutral about what happened, understand that it was for me, not to me. They're playing their part in my life perfectly. And then I will get to the point of appreciating my past interactions with them, which in the past I judged them harshly for doing that to me, which is not the case. So that's been really good. And it also kind of gave me more permission to pursue interests and passions more than I had in the past. So did you get the exercise done?
It's almost done. I went through it. I answered all the questions. So for your point, my relationships with people were great. Where I was struggling was the passions and the finance, my financial flow. So I have a great relationship. And it's funny, when you talk about relationships with people, family, and friends, through this Joshua teaching, I've stopped. My manifestation events were relationship manifestation events over the last, I don't know, probably 3 months. They were all people related. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm no longer asking or even considering, and considering is too strong a word. I'm no longer letting people influence my feelings with their communication. Like I have my parents, my mom is all about guilt, Italian guilt, right? Italian guilt. And we had this conversation, and her whole thing was, that's awful that you think that way. And I'm like, okay. And
you asked a question around this of Joshua within the last week or so, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And even with people that I'm working on with these different groups, like I wanted to go in a certain direction, they didn't. I'm like, okay. I've gotten to a point where I'm living my life. I know that, and I know I have great interest in seeing people happy and spreading a huge interest in seeing people happy and seeing people. And when people tell me, like, if they want to share, they think I'm doing something wrong, or they think they have a negative opinion of me, I would spend in the past hours trying to convince them that they were wrong. Days, right. Weeks, emails, letters. I wanted to convince. And Joshua's teaching, helping me understand that they're on their own journey. They're experiencing their own emotions. You have nothing to do with what they're experiencing. Now, you could choose to get involved and become part of their story and placate them, right? And be part of what they're experiencing. Or you can just say, okay. And I think Tracy says, hey, that's curious, right? And I've gotten to the point saying, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And just letting it go. And I noticed this weekend where we, once again, you're on a field competing, right? My kids are competing and everything. even when I was cheering or I was coaching, it was really just strategic, like helping the kids go, hey, are you playing defense or are you playing out? It was not personal. It was not directive. It was not individual. Somebody had said something. I'm like, okay. So, we had done all these, and I'm like, wow. There were a few times where I felt some things come up and I acknowledged them. But when doing the exercise really helped me say, holy cow, like I have great relationships in my mind, which may be a terrible place to be, with my family, like my wife, my kids, even my parents. I know my mom and my dad think that I'm crazy, and have tried to convince me to do different things. And I'm like, okay, but I no longer let them influence what I'm going through. I give them, I try to respect everybody and let them have their say, and not disagree with them, and just say, okay. And this exercise finally made me realize that when I was going through it. What I was a little shocked about was the money flow when I'm grateful for what I have, and it's not enough. And I'm like, why isn't it enough? Why is my first thought that it's not enough when I have all this other great stuff going on, right? And I think my freedom is at a really high level as well. But I'm not giving it. I don't know. I'm not giving it the value that maybe it deserves, or is even not the right language.
Yeah. There's a lot of perception in the money stuff. And if you live the kind of life that you and I have led previously in business with making big money, it does take some time to detach from the persona and I must do things to a certain standard and all the rest of it. And when you're living, nice middle class lifestyle and all the rest of it, it's there and you can choose to ignore it. And people might start to think you're a bit odd or crazy or whatever. Yeah.
Well, like for COVID, for example, like, and like I said, I feel for the people that had issues, but COVID's been the greatest experience of my life. I'm working from home. I'm spending time with my kids. I got a job in working with a group and consulting in places that I would never have been able to because they needed me to physically be there, and I would never have done
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like, my world has opened up in huge, huge ways. My finances have grown in huge, huge ways. And when I said, and I really feel for the people that are struggling in it, and I would never want to make people feel bad, but people are telling me, you can't say that. I'm like, oh, okay, why not? Like I always say, I'm really sorry for the people that struggled, and I would never want to see people struggle. But I'm not grateful that people are struggling. But in my life, this situation has been a huge benefit. And people go ballistic when they hear that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh my God. Try to tell anybody that this has been the greatest experience of my life. But I always preface it by saying, well, yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. Well, how's it been for you? Like, you really want to know? It's been great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try
We had to
saying
make a
that to
lot of
somebody.
changes because we were living in India, and we scurried home on the last flight out of Mumbai, and we haven't traveled since, and it may be a long time. And I like to say it sounds rock star that we still got this rented apartment in Mumbai, and we've still got stuff there, clothes and whatnot, and all our winter clothes are in an apartment in Paris, in France. So, which sounds totally rock star, and I suppose it is in a way, but that was the life we were living. But we're not living that life anymore. But and we may travel again. We may go to India for maybe one last visit for 6 or 12 months, whatever it might be. But I don't miss it at all because it's like, well, that was what we were doing. We're not doing that now. We can't anyway. So forget about that. It was incredible, and what we're doing now is incredible. And it hasn't honestly, apart from any thoughts you may choose to entertain, it's made no negative difference to our life whatsoever.
But people have a tough time hearing that. And so the gift for me through this has been, now that I hear that, I don't try to defend it. I'm just like, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that, and I hope everything gets better.
Yeah.
I'm able to not engage, not try to sell them on my experience. And meanwhile, when I look at other people, I see their lives getting better, but I do see them choosing a different narrative. Did you hear about so-and-so? I'm like, they're 3,000 miles away. I don't know. I have not. Did you hear about, I'm like, that's a different country. I don't even
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
know. I don't. And like my world, what I'm trying to understand with my world is in front of me. Whatever I'm creating in front of me, right? And my energy and my focus, whatever I'm focusing on, my energy goes and my vibration goes.
Yeah.
And if I can focus on those positives and I can focus on that feeling, everything's going to follow right after that. What I find people doing is focusing on what they heard happened in New York, or what they heard happened in Chicago, or what they heard happened in Brazil, or what they heard happened in India, right? That and to be honest, that has no bearing on my life at the
No,
moment.
I mean, it's one thing to have some empathy and
Oh, of
some
course.
feeling for
Yeah.
situations people are in, but on the other hand, when you judge something as wrong or negative, if you actually took a step back and said, well, what if I chose the opposite thought? What if that wasn't actually how I choose to see it? And I often ask myself, or say to people, well, did that thing actually make any difference to you or your life at all? And eventually people say, well, no, but it's wrong because, and it's like, yeah. So the starting point is it made no difference. And then it's like, well, what if you just made up a story around how that wrong thing in some way could be right? And if you start with the small things and then work your way up, it gets easier and easier as you go. Um, I asked a question maybe on the same call that you did, and Joshua was talking about how mostly when we do things for other people, and I'm mentioning this because you said how you like to do things for other people, and I want to explore, talk a little bit about, are we doing it for our own benefit or out of pure love for them, if that can exist? So Joshua said that mostly when people do things for other people, they do it because they want to be liked, loved, and respected, or some or all of those things. And that's true. And if you look around you, then most so-called altruism is really self-serving. Well, that's probably a cynical way to say it. It's because of people wanting to manipulate or change how people think of them, because they're hoping that if people like, love, and respect them, they'll feel better, which was your point you were making earlier on, that we do it for the feeling of it. But if it's an inauthentic version of the self, of course, it never works. So my question to Joshua was, well, can you actually do something from a place of pure love and giving that is not self-serving and is not to make you feel better just because you want to do it? And they said, yes, you can. And I said, well, the example I gave, which was that we had some family staying and we're all into cooking and food and coffee and stuff. And I bought this big bag of oregano, the herb, and it was like $8 for a pound, which is crazy because, it's like a lifetime supply. And I've also got these amazing Guatemalan coffee beans. So I got a really good coffee machine. And so these people, I said, hey, why don't you take some oregano? Because it's really good oregano. And I'm going to give you some of these coffee beans. Would you like to take some beans? And they did. And they were really, they thought that was awesome. And I said, I felt really good doing it. And Joshua said, yes, that is the thing. You felt really good doing it and you were sharing something you were passionate about, and they were as well. And that actually is not being done to make them like, love, and respect me, but being done out of pure love and joy. So that was interesting to me that you can get to that place. So that is the kind of measure, I think, when you reflect upon what you like to do for people and with people, are you doing it to be liked, loved, and respected, which is never going to work for you? Or are you doing it out of pure joy and passion? And, perhaps a rafting trip with friends will be in that category if you facilitate or pay for it.
So the interesting part, and I love that question. I think it's a really powerful question you had asked. And I thought about it. And then what really came to mind was, who are you doing it for?
Right.
And when I do it to the people that I've known for, 45 years, guys I went to college with, the guys people I know when I've been a kid, it's out of pure love. Like, I just want to see smiles on people's faces. I don't care what they think about. And most of them can think I'm nuts anyway. Right. Why would you ever do this? Why would, and people say that, I'm like, but there are people. And when you said that, I'm like, if I would invite them, it would be to get them to respect me. No question. Right. It depends on who I'm doing it for. So when I look at myself and what I want to do, and I look at the people I want to do it for, I could care less what they thought about me after we did it. Right. But there are those people right? You do it and you want them to go, wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah. I've been through all of that. But the people that are your friends from way back, you know that they think of you whatever they think of you. They probably love you and, always have and always will. And they, probably have unconditional regard for you. And you know that you can't increase that by doing something for them. And I realized that a lot of the things I've done in the past were to get people to like, love, and respect me. But equally, a lot of things I did throughout my life, I realized came from that place of pure joy and passion and sharing, that I did it because it was fun, and it wasn't to try and get them to like me more. It was actually purely done out of passion and fun and love. So I can see that I've been doing both of those things, less of the manipulative version. What do they call it? Transactional is what they call it.
Yeah, transactional. Like we're gonna go away for 4th of July, and do I really want to go? And probably not, but we're gonna go because I just love the look on my kid's face, right, on where we're going and what we're doing. Like that to me. And if you have kids, they won't like you anymore.
No,
they already don't like you. So the best part is, like, when I say who I'm doing it for, when I do it for my family, I can't get my family to like me anymore. I mean, kids dislike parents. That's just, they love their parents. But if you have kids and teenagers, you know that if you could buy them the most expensive thing on the planet, and they'll hate you tomorrow because you didn't do this, or you didn't do that.
Yeah, teenagers are like that, aren't they? Yeah.
Like my daughter she's going on a trip with some friends this week, and she's like, Dad, my computer broke. It's not working. And she needed a new one. It was like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old computer, and it was on its last legs. And I'm like, she's like, we need to go. I need to go, right, Dad? We need to get it before I go and I travel. I need it for this. I need it for that. So you're like, okay. And my wife and I are like, all right, we knew we needed to get her one anyway. So we run out, and, tomorrow and yesterday in the middle of the day, she's flying out, last night. We take all our time. We get her what she needs. Oh my God, she didn't take it. And I'm like,
that's hilarious.
We just wanted like a thank you, right? We spent all the time, and you don't just go to a Mac store anymore and buy a computer. You got to get online. You got to put your name in, right? Nothing happens quickly. In the middle of the day, we're doing all this thing, and we're thinking she's appreciating. She's still angry.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's the nature of teens, really, isn't it?
It really is. But that was a great question. It made me look deeper into not what I was doing, but who was I doing it for?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's pretty important, because I have done both. And when I got into finance and made a lot of money, and I saw people doing stuff, especially an ex-business partner of mine who would try and pay for everything all the time. And whenever he could lend money to people, he would. And I realized eventually that he felt deeply unworthy, and that he wanted people to like and respect him and love him because he helped them out and paid for everything. And I guess he also wanted people to be dependent on him, so he had power over them. And it never worked for him, because it never solved his feelings of unworthiness. And he was deeply unworthy the whole time, which I got out of that business. In the end, I sold out. And then several years later, the business choices he was making, which I didn't agree with, which came from his unworthiness, led to the demise of that business.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and I would agree that even if someone's generous enough, I'm always grateful if they pay for something. But I don't have any lingering. There's no lingering respect. I'm like, if they pay for it, really grateful, thank you. But I don't owe them anything. I'm like, I'm like, why would I think if I took care of somebody or I paid for somebody that they owed me something? But we do, right? We get in. People get into that, like, where money is power, where, hey, I've paid for this, you owe me. Like, no, you don't, and no, they don't.
There is the whole reciprocity thing, which is, I've studied it in social anthropology, and it is quite universal that reciprocity is a thing. It does seem to be, it's a strong psychological factor, used widely in marketing as well, that you give something to somebody, and at some level they feel they owe you something. But reciprocity is really a thing, and in pretty much every culture, from what I understand, that there is people feel an obligation. We had a friend who always insisted on paying for meals, and he made it really impossible. And in the end, I said, look, I'm not going out for meals with you guys anymore unless we split it, okay? And he finally got it, and it's like, okay, fine. But he was just, I don't know why he did it. but it was his habit. But I got to the point where I just felt uncomfortable with it.
Yeah,
And that was the
it is.
reciprocity thing. And I thought, what if I just let him do it? What if I hadn't resisted like I did, a year ago? What if I took a completely different approach now? And I thought, if he wants to pay, he can pay. I don't care. And
How
I
would you do
suppose,
that?
why was that? Like, did he think I couldn't afford it? Did he want to get one over me? What if I let it? I mean, it would have been interesting. It's gone now, that opportunity, but that would have been interesting to just let it run and see what happened.
Yeah, so that's the question. Right now, with your mindset now, would you stop him, or would you every meal ask, hey, can I share with this? Can I share in the cost with you? And just let him, he says, no, I got it, and just let him do it. But continue to ask as you would. How would
Yeah.
you handle it now with your mindset?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I have wondered whether I could actually allow him to pay if he really wanted to. It's like, okay, the universe is giving me free meals, like, nice. But
So you know why, right? There's only one reason why men pay for other men, right? Only one reason. I'm stronger, bigger, better than you. There's only reason why men pay for meals consistently.
and I guess I did feel that. Yeah. And he gave me various reasons, like his wife and I are on the board of this company together, and we work very well together, and I support her a lot. She gets things done. She's great to work with. And her and I work behind the scenes a lot, and I support her and give her ideas and blah, blah. So he said, oh, you work so well with her and you do so much for her, and, you make it so easy for her and blah, blah, blah. And so was trying to say, this is my way of thanking you for that. It's like, nah, that doesn't wash. I don't believe that's true. So I didn't swallow that one. But anyway, it's true. I did feel all that stuff, that you described, all those potential things, the reciprocity, a man paying for another man, blah, blah, blah. So all of that was going on, big time manifestation event. So next time it happens, if it ever does, then maybe I'll try and just let it run and see what happens, or get to neutral or positive about it. Think, okay, this is wonderful. Every time we go out with these people, I get a free meal. How fantastic. The universe has given me a free meal ticket.
So I had an old boss in New York. God rest his soul. His name is Mark Zambrato. Very Italian. And his cousin Chippy used to run the book in Queens, New York for the Gambino crime family. Like, this guy was very smart guy, brilliant.
My God.
But but right when I first started, he trained me. He's like, you would say to me, you never take anything from anybody. You never take anything. You pay. You take care. Somebody offers you, you say no, thank you. So you would say, and I worked with the guy for 5 years, brilliant guy. But I got into my head, and then we were in advertising. So people were offering me stuff all the time, and I would be like, no. And I got to the point where I couldn't receive anything. I couldn't receive anything. And I would just pay for everything, anything, anywhere, any that. And he had drilled it into my head to the point, and this was back in 1990. And this, just recently I'm able to get through this. And just recently, this past weekend, we were out to dinner with a group of people, and this guy, picked up a check before I even knew it. And I went over and gave him a hug. Thank you. Can I share it? Can I give the tip? Can I do? No, I got it. Oh, okay. Thank you. And I'm like, and I wouldn't normally do that. I would take cash, put it in the guy's pocket. I would do something, right, to build myself back up, right, because of my, my unworthy feelings, my insignificant feelings of my own, right. But I'm getting to the point, it is through Joshua's teachings, that I'm just going, wow, thank you so much. I was in a fast food place picking up stuff for my kids the other day, and this woman walked in a wheelchair begging, right? And I once again have my poverty thoughts, got my back up, and was like, oh my God, want to be there, want to help them, want to send love. And I'm thinking this through Josh, send love, send love. This little kid walks in, teenager girl, whatever, in her 20s, buys the girl a meal, right? And gives it to her. I'm like, wow, that's just so amazing. And then I end up sitting next to the girl as we're waiting, and a guy walks over and puts money in her lap and said, that was the nicest thing you've done. And she's like, no, I didn't do it for anything. And it was like, whatever, $20. I think the girl probably spent $5. And she goes, here, let me share the wealth, tries to give me the money. And I looked at her, I said, you gotta be willing to receive if you do a good deed. She's like, what do you mean? I said, somebody saw you do a good deed and wanted to, don't give that away.
Yeah.
say thank you.
Yeah. It's the other side of the same coin. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I've been getting all of these interesting this week, and it's super interesting starting on Sunday. This week, I've been getting a lot of these interesting financial situations pop up where there's a lot of financial aspects going on. How am I reacting to it? We're going to do this vacation. We're going to do that. We're going to spend, and my kids aren't going to appreciate it, aren't going to care. And I don't care. I'm like, it'll be fun. When I would have been like, my wife and I would have been like, yeah, they're not going to care. They're not going to appreciate it. We're going to do all this. And we would have said, it's just not worth it. Now I'm like, we're just going to have fun.
And you'll probably find, when they're 25, they'll say, Dad, do you remember
when you used to have
July, just after COVID, when we went away and we did this, that, and the other, just after the trip to San Diego, blah, blah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's,
I have seven step grandchildren from my wife who passed away. She had grandchildren, so I have 7 step grandchildren. And one time we were at this lake in this beautiful part of New Zealand, and we went to all the like the luge and the gondola and all that kind of stuff. And these kids, they were quite young at the time. They weren't really that impressed with everything. I was spending all this money on them, right? And I thought, you ungrateful wretches. And then we went to this lake in the middle of nowhere, a smaller lake, and there was some birds there, and there was this kind of fine gravel for the beach. And they started picking up sticks in the gravel and throwing it in the water. And these kids then started having the best time ever, just, making do with whatever was in front of them in nature that cost nothing. And I suddenly realized, actually, it's me that has the problem, not them. They're just kids, and they found something they enjoy. They didn't enjoy the stuff that I paid for that I thought they should enjoy. And the thing they talk about is that on that trip was there's this massive redwood forest, and it's a thermal area, but like Yellowstone, and in some places the steam rising, and it was winter. And I knew that in the morning it would be kind of otherworldly if we went there at dawn in these giant redwoods and the steam rising. And so I was into this whole men's work thing at the time, and warrior and king and all that sort of archetypes. And these were kids, they weren't even 10 at the time. And so we went along there, and I started talking to them about monsters and dragons and knights and warriors, and they were picking up sticks, and they just suddenly got into this whole fantasy world. And now these guys are dads, and they're in their whatever they are now, their 20s or 30s or whatever they are. And I say, Rob, do you remember when we went to the redwood forest at dawn? Which cost nothing, right? Cost absolutely nothing. And it's like, oh, okay. They remember this way, way later, and it was, a rich experience. So that was a good lesson for me, that with kids, to find whatever it is they're enjoying and interested in, and just to play with that, and just, let that play run in a kind of free-flowing way. And that's their real joy.
I love that. I got a 2:30 call, Rob.
Great to see you.
This has been awesome.
Same
great
place,
seeing you.
Same time next week.
I love it. I love these calls. Thank you so much.
Yes, great. Okay, see you soon.
Bye-bye.
See you, Drew.